Welcome back, everyone. I scored another interview, this time with the atheist, activist, and comedian Andy Hall. He's got his own channel, Laughing in Disbelief. Link will be in the description. I was on his program recently, so make sure you head over there and check that out. Andy, thanks for joining me.
Why, thank you for having me on the show. I do appreciate it.
Indeed, indeed. You are a survivor of religion. You went through the whole thing, which is something that I've never been through. You see, I tried to believe it. I wanted to believe it, but I don't actually have the experience of being someone who had conviction that Jesus was God and everything like that. So I'm really interested in this issue because I tried like hell to be a Christian, but I just couldn't believe that the ridiculous nature of it was actually true. So I'm curious about your background. How did you come to be a Baptist?
Well, like most people who are religious, I grew up in the one true faith, and that was the faith of my parents.
Yeah.
The faith of my parents happened to be Baptists, not the Southern Baptist, because we weren't traitors. You know, the Southern Baptists were the ones who fought for the South during the Civil War and were pro-slavery. So we were not Southern Baptists. We were just garden variety, white bread and mayonnaise Baptists. Yeah. So my mother.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just curious. I just curious. You were indoctrinated. Tell us how that all happened.
So my mother was the church organist and choir director of the church that we belonged to, and my father was deacon, an elder in the church.
Wow.
Right. And so I was there, Sunday school, church, junior church, went on a few churchy kind of field trips. I did the full body immersion baptism because, you know, that's what Baptists do. We do it right. That's what we do. We do baptism right. Full crazy in the water. Slight chance, maybe you're going to drown. You're not really sure. You're probably not going to, but there's always a moment there in getting pulled out. So that's how I became indoctrinated in the faith. But you can say that, but there's so many weird nooks and crannies to this horrible crumpet that need to be talked about. Like, for an example, when I was about 6 years old, and you not having grown up as a believer, you may not know this, but there is a time of the big reveal. There's a moment of the big reveal where they tell very, very small children exactly how Jesus died. And it's right around, as I recall, about 6 years old or so. And I still remember that too vividly to this day. And this speaks to the harm even garden variety faith can do to a kid, because they went into pretty in-depth analysis of what crucifixion is, how Jesus supposedly suffered on the cross, and oh my fictitious God, I remember I was a sensitive kid, and I remember bursting in tears, inconsolable. And they had to bring my mom in, who was doing choir practice, to try to calm my butt down.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a traumatic experience, to say the least.
You know, something that used to bother me a lot when I was younger, because I was processing the religious ideas. My mother was a Christian and she would read to me, but I was like afraid of the whole hell thing, because I thought that it wasn't right, that it was basically nonsensical, but I thought that maybe it was true. I wasn't entirely sure, and I was afraid to risk it, right? I was really like troubled about that issue, that hell might be true. And maybe that's why I tried like hell to be a Christian. I wanted to convince myself, just in case I was wrong about that hell thing. Whoever invented that hell thing in the past, that was really one giant leap for converting people to their religion, because it still bothers people today. So what happened from there? You were told that Jesus was real and everything. And
Jesus is real. He died on the cross. He did it because we're all naughty, naughty children, for all intents and purposes, original sin and all that. So not only did this perfect person live, but he died because we are all just bad, bad, bad. So you might be surprised by how that kind of affects a kid, right? You start getting kind of concerned about hell because then they tell you about hell, right? Because up until around 6 years old, it was just like Noah's Ark. They're happy rabbits. Look, the bunnies are going into the ark, and giraffes and animal stories. And then they just start hitting you with the bad news, basically around 6 or 7. Christ died on the cross. Oh, and by the way, there's this little place called hell. Because that guy who died on the cross, he's a bit angry at you. And that's what happens when you don't do what he tells you to. Basically, to summarize it all up for anyone at home who doesn't realize what the story is, that's what it boils down to.
Yeah, that's really troubling because, we've come too far with science and understanding. This is a very, I can't say that it's an extraordinary experience because I have nothing to compare it to, but this universe is just an incredible, unfathomable thing. And we conscious agents, you would think that the proper way for a child would be to be introduced to the world and they could try to figure it out and work through things and come to whatever understanding the data produced for them. But someone steps in those indoctrination circles and they start to feed them this false narrative, right? And it consumes people. And it can be a worst case scenario. Sometimes people get through it without any real problems, but it's very troubling. What strikes me with this is the age range that you're talking about. At 6 years old, you've now been basically they've described you this eternal place of torment, and they've told you that there's something wrong with you, that you're defective, and that you have to try to work against that or you'll be tormented for eternity at the age of 6. So go ahead, Andy.
Going to Sunday school, it's interesting how the indoctrination worked. So every week we'd be given some Bible verses to remember, right? And I always did very well with the Bible verses. And there was also some good competition between me and one of the other kids in my Sunday school class about who would remember the most Bible verses and do a good job. And then we had to remember all the books of the New Testament and then all the books of the Old Testament. And if we remembered the books of the New Testament, we would get a shiny $50. And if we remembered all the books of the Old Testament, we would get another shiny $50. And to tell you the truth, there's a lot more books in the Old Testament than there is in the New Testament. And
that'd be a challenge.
I thought that I should be getting more. I didn't think that it was equitable. I thought I should be getting more for the Old Testament books over the New Testament books.